The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Saira, and thank you all for coming in today. So we are going to talk about IELTS, and hopefully I'll be able to take some questions at the end. So thank you for waiting. We're sorry we had to start a bit late. We were hoping for more attendees to join. So let's get started. So what are the aims in this presentation? Why choose IELTS? What are the test components, and how can the British Council help? I'm hoping everyone can hear me. If you could respond in the chat box before I continue. So I'm assuming everyone can hear me, and I'm going to continue. So our presentation aims, I'm going to be talking in 3 parts. Why choose IELTS? What are the test components? And how can the British Council help? Right? So why choose IELTS? IELTS helps achieve life goals. You can see that we have differentiated into 3 sections. First one is education, where most of you fall in place. We have a higher education, and you would be applying for 3 different types of universities. We have the local universities, we have the international universities, and we have the international universities abroad. What do we mean by this classification is that if it's a local university, these are universities run by governments and are based in the UAE. International universities are those universities that have their off campuses here. So they have a branch over here, which could be Hiratwat University, Middlesex University, University of Wollongong. You have different universities who have the campus in the UAE. They come under the second classification, which is international university. And the third one is international university abroad. So these are all the universities you apply to which are not based in the UAE. So applying to one of these universities, you might require IELTS as one of your application requirements. The second half is your career. So after you finish your higher education and you get a job, you might have to give IELTS again for increasing your employability and for your career progress. One of the other reasons why people have to give IELTS is for immigration, wherein they wish to migrate to another country. Moving on. We have different IELTS for different life goals. So if it's for life, you are going for migration, you are going to the UK. If you're going to the UK, you might have to give IELTS life skills. If you are going to a non-UK country, you might have to give IELTS. For work, it could be a professional registration. So again, you would require to do IELTS. For study, if it's a direct entry, you might have to give IELTS if it's a non-UK university. If it's a UK university, you might have to give IELTS for UKVI or IELTS for life skills. So these are the different products that we provide at this level. We have global recognition. We have about 10,000 organizations in 140 countries which accept IELTS as part of their application process. All the universities in the UK, Australia, New Zealand, and most universities in Canada accept IELTS. Immigration authorities in Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and the UK accept IELTS as part of their immigration process. Recently, we have many employers and professional registration bodies who are also accepting IELTS as part of their recruitment process. What are our test features? We have rigorous test development, so all the comments, feedbacks from every test has been taken into consideration, and tests are developed rigorously. The content is relevant to real life, a variety of question types, and a choice between taking the test on pen and paper or on computer. We have strict security, and test results are verifiable online. We have more than 3.5 million IELTS tests taken in the last year. What are the test components? So IELTS, the first step in IELTS is understanding the exam, what is it about, and then being able to prepare for it. So the format of the test is we have the listening, then we have the reading, we have the writing, and then we have the speaking. You can see that reading and writing has two sections. We have the academic and we have the general training. These are the two types of modules you can choose to give your exam in. Academic is usually given for those who are applying for undergraduate or graduate courses, and general training is usually given for those who are going for training courses or for immigration. So these are the components. We're going to go one by one and see what each component is all about. So we start with the listening. So listening test is a duration of 30 minutes plus 10 minutes. If you are giving the computerized version, you only have 30 minutes to do the exam. If you do the pen and paper, you have 30 minutes to do the exam and 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet. Now, the listening is divided into 4 sections, and each section is a different conversation, right? And you will have headphones and the CD will be played once. So the first section is a conversation between two speakers in a social and semi-official context, which means it could be a conversation about a survey, it could be a conversation about someone inquiring about a part-time job or a summer job. So it'll be a conversation between two people. Section 2 is a talk by a single speaker based on a non-academic situation, which means that it could be a person talking about the events for today. So you probably are having a lot of webinars you're attending today. So one person going through all the different kind of webinars that are going to be held today, the speakers and their topics. Section 3 is a conversation of up to 4 speakers based on academic topics or course-related situations, right? So these conversations would be basically a conversation between the students and their mentor, where they're talking about a project they're working on. And then the last section is a university-style lecture or talk, right? So this university-style lecture talk is basically picked up from a university lecture, wherein it could be on any relevant topic. So it's not necessary it would be a topic you know about, so it gets really difficult for you to understand what the person is talking about. Therefore, it becomes very important that you understand what the person is talking about, right? So each section, you have 40 questions in total spread over 4 sections. The questions are of different types. It could be fill in the blanks, choose the following, multiple choice questions, and so on and so forth, right? In 30 minutes, you have enough time to listen to the questions and write the answers and check your answers, right? Let's move on and see what are you marked on in the listening content, right? So what are you marked on in the listening module? So you get 1 mark for every correct answer. So 40 questions, 40 answers. You don't lose marks for wrong answer. Care should be taken when writing answers on the answer sheet, as poor spelling and grammar are penalized. What we mean by this is your spelling needs to be accurate. We do accept both English. We have the myth or the assumption that only British English is allowed. It's not the case. You can write US English or American English or British English, but you need to ensure that your spelling is absolutely correct. Grammar. What do we mean by grammar is that if the answer has to be in singular, you need to write the answer in singular. However, if the answer has to be in plural, but if you write in singular, you might not get a correct answer. Moving on, we have the reading test content. The reading test content is test detailed and general understanding, writer's attitude and opinion, and development of arguments and ideas. So we basically have 3 test texts with 1,500 to 2,000 words each. Now, with academic and general training, the level of difficulty could be different for each, but usually for academic, the difficulty increases as the section goes. But again, person to person, you might find one easier and one difficult. right? Again, reading has the same format as the listening. You have 40 questions that you will have to answer. But the main difference between listening and reading is that for listening, you have 10 minutes extra that you get to transfer your answers. But for reading, you don't have any extra time. So you need to ensure that in 16 minutes, you read the questions, read the passages, and write the answers on the answer sheet and not in the question booklet, right? So with the reading test, one of the main tips that we give, or you have to have, or the technique that you need to master is skimming and scanning. You should know when you have to skim a passage and when you have to scan a passage. The kind of questions that you're asked in the reading test is multiple choice, choose the following, fill in the blanks, true, false, and not given, choose the paragraph which it belongs to, match the heading to the correct paragraph. So these are the different types of questions. So you have different set of questions for each passage, right? And we always see, so you have 16 minutes and you have 3 parts. So you divide into 3 parts, which means 20 minutes per part. So you need to ensure that you manage your time very well, because most of the candidates, when they finish the exam, they always come back with the comment that they were not able to complete their reading module. The reason is they haven't managed their time well. So you need to ensure that you manage your time correctly, and you have 20 minutes for each part. Do not waste more time on one question. Skip, come back to it later if you have the time. So what are you marked on? You're marked on 40 items. Again, 1 mark for each correct answer. You don't lose marks for a wrong answer. What we mean by this is that there's no negative marking. Care should be taken when writing answers on the answer sheet, as poor spelling and grammar are penalized. Again, when you're writing your answers, you need to ensure that you're writing it correctly. If the markings or bullet that's used is 1, 2, 3, 4, your answer has to be in 1, 2, 3, 4. Or if it's Roman numeral, you should ensure that you're using Roman numerals to write your answers. Coming to the last part of the test day is writing test. Writing test is divided into 2 sections. You have a task 1 and a task 2. Task 1 is describing a graph, pie chart, table, or process. What we mean by this is that you would probably get a table with some numericals on it, some data on it, or you could have a pie chart with some data on it, and you would be asked to describe what you can understand, right? So in task 1, in 150 words, you're supposed to describe the table or the pie chart or a graph or the process that you provided. What you need to ensure in the 150 words is that you do not assume anything, right? You only describe what you can see. Don't make an assumption that what is not there in the graph, right? So moving on is to task 2. Task 2 is usually an essay. It's 250 words. Now you need to adhere to the word limit, as there is a chance of penalizing because you've not met the word limit. So task 1's word limit is 150 words. And task 2's word limit is 250 words. Now, when you write an essay, you need to ensure that you're writing it in the correct format, which means that it has an introduction, it has a body, it has a conclusion. You need to ensure that you are following this format, because this helps you in scoring more marks, right? You have 60 minutes, and you need to, we always advise 20 minutes for task 1 and 40 minutes for task 2. Now, when you're doing this, you need to ensure that you manage your time. And when we say 20 minutes and 40 minutes, you need to also have some time to prepare your answer or plan your answer, then write your answer, and then read your answer or revise your answer, because this is how it will help you to do your writing test correctly. So you need to, again, manage your time correctly. So one of the main goals you need to have while giving the IELTS exam is to be able to manage your time correctly. If you're not able to, you will be missing answering 1 or 2 questions, which could affect your band scores. You also need to know that the task 2 has double the weightage of task 1. So if task 1 is worth 4 marks, task 2 is worth 8 marks. Now the main thing is, what are you marked on in writing test? What is that you are marked on, right? So you're marked on 4 things. You're marked on task achievement or response. What do we mean by task achievement or response? Task achievement means how much have you been able to answer the question that's been asked? Have you answered it correctly? The second one is lexical resource. What does lexical resource mean? It's the vocabulary that you're using. Have you used the correct vocabulary, right? Again, understand what I'm saying. Have you used the correct vocabulary? It does not mean have you used sophisticated vocabulary. It means are you using the right vocabulary? The third one is cohesion and coherence. What we mean by this is, are you able to provide your ideas, and are you able to connect your ideas to what you're trying to say? How understanding are you to the person who's reading your essay? The last one is grammatical range and accuracy. How well is your grammar and your sentence structure? Have you used the correct sentences? Is your essay only simple sentences, or are you able to use complex structures? Right, so this is what you're marked on, and you're marked on a scale of 9, 0 to 9 for each one of them, and an average is taken for your total writing score. Moving on to the last one, it's the speaking test content. Speaking test can be conducted 7 days before the test, or on the test date, or 7 days after the test date. So it's not necessary, it will happen on the same day. Listening, reading, writing will be on the same day, one after the other. Speaking will be given another day, or if it's on the same day, you will have an interview slot. The interview slot is of 20 minutes, and you're requested to come 30 minutes prior to the test date because of registration process, right? So the speaking test duration is 11 minutes to 14 minutes, and it is divided into 3 parts. The first part is personal questions, right? So this is a one-on-one conversation between you and the examiner, right? And it's a recorded session, and they will ask you questions like, the first basic questions are, what is your name? Where are you from? Do you work or do you study? Right? And then after that, it could be questions on your hobbies, your house. It could be about your school. It could be about your neighborhood. It could be about your city, your hometown. Very basic questions to get you to be able to speak. Again, what you need to see is that in this section, you don't give one-word answers. You try to give proper sentences. Just as an example, if an examiner asks me, where do you live? And I reply, Dubai. It does not give an examiner much on how much he or she can mark me on my proficiency of the language, right? So try to ensure that you give proper sentences. Say, I live in Dubai, or I'm living in Dubai from the past 10 years, 12 years. Give some more information on the question asked rather than just a plain one-word answer. The second part is called the individual long turn, which is you giving a speech for 2 minutes. The examiner will provide you a topic card and will give you 1 minute to prepare. And you will have a paper and pencil in your hand, and you can make notes for 1 minute, prepare your speech, and then you will be asked to speak for 2 minutes. This is a time session, so the examiner will stop you once the 2 minutes are done. Once the second part is, so the second part has topics related to current affairs. It could be about you, it could be your opinion. So it could be, if I have to give you an example, the topic could be, tell me about a museum you visited recently, and then you could be asked about what did you see, where was it, why did you choose to go there? So these are the things you could talk about, right? And then, so these are the kind of topics you would have in part 2, and you need to see that you're able to talk for 2 minutes. When I say talk for 2 minutes, for us, it's always the case that, it's easy. I mean, I can talk for 2 minutes. That's no hard pass. But honestly, when you try to talk for 2 minutes, record yourself, you'll see how long it is. So I would always suggest practice before you go for the exam on giving a speech for 2 minutes. Moving on to the last part, it's the part 3. It's the two-way discussion on more abstract issues. They're loosely based on the topic in part 2, but it's more about your opinion on different things. So if my part 2 was about museums, my part 3 questions would be, do you think museums is important in today's world? Do you think it's right to keep artifacts in museums? Do you think vandalism is good or bad? You know, questions like that. Do you think art should be commercialized? So it's all about your opinion and what do you think about it. Now in this whole speaking test, what you need to understand is that it's all about your opinion. So there's no right or wrong answers. What you need to ensure is that understand what you're marked on. So I'll move on to my next slide. You're marked on 4 things. The first one is fluency and coherence, how fluent you are and how much the examiner can understand what you're speaking. Second one is lexical resource, again, the vocabulary you're using while you speak. Third is grammatical range and accuracy. Are you using the right sentence structure? The last one is pronunciation. Are you pronouncing the words correctly? Now you can see none of these have the accent. So what you need to understand is, one of the main questions I get from students is, what about my accent? Will I be penalized for it? No, you will not. It's something you can't do much about. What you will be penalized is if you're pronouncing the word incorrectly. So what you need to see is that you know how to pronounce your words, right? So these are the 4 components that you will be marked on, and cumulative will give you your IELTS overall band score. So what should you remember on the test day? You have to report to the venue in good time. You cannot take a mobile phone into the test hall. You have to bring the ID that you used to register for the test. You have to report at least 1 hour before your appointment time. Now, let's talk about the IELTS band score. The IELTS band score is in a scale of 0 to 9. So 0 means you did not attempt the test, and if you get a band 9, it means you are an expert user. So if you can see, IELTS, you get scored between whole bands and half bands. What we mean by that is you could either get a 5 or a 5.5, a 6, a 6.5, or a 7 and a 7.5. So that's how your scores will be. All scores put together will give you an overall band score. So depending on the university you're applying to, you need to check what is the band score the university is looking for. Some universities require separate scores for each module. So they would say we need a 7 in listening, we need a 7 in reading, 6 in writing, and a 7 in speaking. Some universities would say we just need an overall band score of 7. So you need to check with the university so that you can prepare accordingly to the band score you require to get the admissions in the universities you're seeking to. Now, the main question, how does it all come together? How is it calculated? So as I mentioned earlier, each module you are given a band score of 0 to 9. So right, you can see in this candidate A, listening is 6.5, reading is 6.5, writing is 5, speaking is 7. So the average score is 6.25. Now the 6.25, as I mentioned earlier, your IELTS band scores are always in whole bands or half bands. So 6.25 gets rounded up to 6.5. So you get bumped up to 6.5. But on the other scenario, if you come to candidate C, it's a 6.5 in listening, 6.5 in reading, 5.5 in writing, and speaking is 6. Now the average score comes up to 6.125. You would all tell that, hey, 6.125, it needs to be rounded off to 6.5. But well, no. 6.125 gets rounded up to 6. Why? Because it's closer to 6, and that's the law of average, right? So 6 is the band score you will get, and not Moving on, how can the British Council help you? So with the British Council, we have a lot of resources that we'll be able to provide. So some of them are the Road to IELTS, which you will be able to get once you register for an IELTS exam with us. We have the Facebook Ask the IELTS Expert group where you can ask questions and our IELTS experts all over the world would be able to reply to your questions. We also have mobile apps. We have the British Council 1001 Ways, British Council IELTS, and IELTS Tips. We also run IELTS Ready sessions. We have webinars that we're having every week, which you could join in on our Take IELTS website. We have IELTS Advantage sessions that we're running in. We have an IELTS Prep essential guide that we give to every candidate that registers for an exam. So it's a guide which has practice papers that you can go through, right? So these are a variety of resources that we provide to our students when they register with us. So just to take you through, this is our website. You can register over here for the IELTS. We have 10 hours of free online practice, which you can register before you register for an exam. So you can go through this and then register for an IELTS exam. Coming to the main one, the IELTS indicator. I know most of you have gotten this test, and what we want to see from this is that it is a product that we've released to help students adhere to their deadlines with their universities. It is an online test that can be taken at the comfort and safety of your home. It is a product available for a limited time in those countries where the testing has been suspended due to COVID-19. It is an academic test and not developed for immigration purposes. It provides an indicator score only and is not accepted by all organizations. So before you book, please check with your university or educational institution about the acceptance of the score. Again, the IELTS indicator has the listening, reading, writing, and speaking. The speaking would be a video call, a conversation with an IELTS examiner. The IELTS indicator is as much as an IELTS exam, and it's only for this period due to COVID-19 where we're unable to test students for IELTS. If you have any questions on these, please feel free to ask in the chat box. I would like to play a video right now. You could also see it in your handouts. You can click on your handouts and you'll be able to watch the video along with me. I'm open to questions now. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask, and I'll be able to answer as many as I can.
Hi, Sayira. Can you hear me?
Hi, Lena.
Hi, there's a question here. When are the original IELTS happening?
As of now, we are starting from 9th May, but we'll keep you posted.
And what are the original, what is the maximum word limit? We can go above the word limit mentioned.
We would always advise don't go more than 10 to 15% above it, because you really wouldn't have the time to write more than that. So if it's 150, about 175 maximum, 250, again, stick to 275. Don't write more than that. You really wouldn't have the time.
What is the average IELTS score?
It's different for different people. So it depends on you and your English.
Needed for DXB universities. What is the average for
Dubai universities?
Yeah.
Depending on the university they are applying to. If it's government universities, it's about 4.5. If it's international universities, it's anything ranging from 4.5 to 7.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's different for each university because it depends on the course they're applying for.
And what is the age criteria for giving an IELTS test?
They have to be at least 16.
Okay. One was asking, what's the cost for booking?
Right, so if it is an IELTS paper-based exam, it's 1,120, and computer-delivered IELTS is 1,260.
One was asking if there's any website that they can go to practice and do like practice tests and demo tests.
TakeIELTS.org.
Did everyone get that?
It's TakeIELTS.org.
Yeah. Let me see if there's another question here. Is there any content difference between IELTS academic and IELTS for UK?
So if you're talking about IELTS academic test and IELTS for UKVI, no, there's no difference in terms of content. The only reason why there is a difference is IELTS for UKVI is recorded on camera, video recorded on camera. So that's the only difference, but the papers are absolutely the same.
Okay. Let's see if there's another question. This question, is it over?
So again, let me just share some pointers. If it's an IELTS paper-based exam, your results were released in 13 days. If you do a computer-delivered exam, your results are released in 5 to 7 days. Paper-based exams are available 4 times a month. Computer-delivered is available throughout the week. You have different sessions, so you can decide which one's easier for you. With computer-delivered IELTS, you can choose your speaking slots, so it helps it make it easier. So these are the different things. So again, depending on how you find it comfortable. So if you're comfortable in writing with pen, go for a pen and paper exam. If you're comfortable on a keyboard, please go off for the computer-delivered IELTS exam.
There's another question.
Yeah, here. Go ahead.
Are IELTS necessary for CBSE curriculum students?
CBSE curriculum depends on the universities you're applying to. So if the university asks you to submit your IELTS course, yes, it becomes mandatory. But again, if it doesn't, then you have to check with the university again.
Another question, if I take the IELTS indicator test, do I have to take the IELTS official test as well after the suspension is over?
It again depends on the university. If they're not happy with the IELTS indicator score and they request you to do IELTS again, you might have to do it again. So again, it's the university's call. So if they say they're okay with the IELTS indicator score, no need to do IELTS, well, good enough. But then some universities might ask you to do the IELTS again.
Okay. Another question, I'm going to be applying for universities and in the fall. So should I take the IELTS indicator test now, or should I wait to do the original test?
So you do have enough time, depending on the admission timeline. If you have time, well, wait for it. But if the COVID-19 situation is still going to go ahead, then you have to give the IELTS indicator. But have enough time to decide on when you want to give the exam. And check with the university if they accept it or not.
All right.
One more thing, the IELTS results are valid for 2 years. So it's valid for 2 years from the test date. So that's how it's calculated.
Okay. Let me see if there are any more questions here. 1 second. Does anyone have any more questions? You can post them and I can read them to Sayera. Okay, there are no more questions coming in. I believe that's it. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. We will be posting a copy of this recording on our YouTube, My Path to Uni YouTube channel. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to send us an email at mypathtouni@gemseducation.com. Thank you. Thanks, Sayera.
Thank you.